He's the soul of American country music, with a warm Georgia voice, a white cowboy hat, and honky-tonk songs that bring back memories for an entire generation. From Chattahoochee to Where Were You? Alan Jackson became a national icon, earning 35, no one-hits, and a place of honor in the Country Music Hall of Fame. But few people know that at the height of his fame, he lost everything in a house fire in 1998 and nearly lost the marriage he had cherished since his youth. He once lived in a 22,000-square-foot mansion in the heart of Tennessee, but he never forgot the mobile home where he grew up. Alan never chased the spotlight. He simply lived with honesty. And that's exactly why millions of Americans have stood by him for over 3 decades. So what keeps a man steady through the storms without losing who he is? Today, let's take a closer look at the remarkable, sometimes lavish but always heartfelt story of Alan Jackson. If you enjoy stories like this one, please hit the like button. It really helps us out, and feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below. Before the million-dollar mansions and golden Grammy trumpets, Alan Jackson lived in a house so small, even his dreams had to squeeze in to find space. But somehow, music from an old AM radio drifted into his soul, soft as the morning light over rural Georgia. Alan Eugene Jackson was born in 1958 in Newnan, Georgia, a quiet little town surrounded by peanut farms, cornfields, and longleaf pines. His family of 6 lived in a cramped, humble trailer. It was modest, but filled with warmth. In the 1960s, when a television was still a luxury, the AM radio became Alan's closest companion. He'd sit out on the porch listening as his grandmother turned up the evening gospel hymns, those early melodies quietly planting the seeds of a love for music he didn't yet have a name for. At 12, Alan snuck over to a neighbor's house to hear their radio. That's when he first heard the voice of Hank Williams. He was hooked so much so he forgot it was dinner time. But when his father found out, legend has it, he didn't scold him. Instead, he handed Alan an old guitar and said, "Do something with it." Maybe he saw something in his son's eyes, something Alan himself hadn't yet discovered. Teenage years were filled with hard work, mowing lawns, washing cars, installing signs. His clothes were plain, out of style. He was tall, quiet, often standing alone in the schoolyard. But every feeling he couldn't put into words, he poured into that guitar, the only friend who never needed an explanation. At 16, Alan was invited to sing at a local church. His voice cracked on the very first line, and he wanted nothing more than to step off the stage. But his mother's eyes from the front row kept him standing. And when the song ended, a simple, heartfelt round of applause gave him his first spark of belief. Maybe I can do this. Later, a friend gave him a cassette tape filled with songs by Gene Watson and John Anderson. Alan listened over and over, mimicking their voices night after night. At 18, he joined a local band called Dixie Steel, not to chase fame, but just to afford gas for the drive home. One night, he got booed off stage for singing off-tempo. Some people even walked out, but Alan kept going until the last note. When the silence settled, one person clapped, and to him, that was enough to keep going. In those humble beginnings, Alan tasted what it meant to be truly heard, even if only once. But when he left Newnan with just $50 in his pocket, the question lingered. Would Nashville open its arms, or would the doors of the big city quietly close behind him? Nashville in the 1980s, a city swept up by MTV chasing new sounds and fresh faces. Classic country was being labeled outdated. But that's exactly where Alan Jackson chose to gamble his future. He had no contract, no sponsor, just a few demo tapes, an old guitar, and a wife who believed in him more than he believed in himself. In 1985, Alan and Denise, his high school sweetheart, left their hometown of Newnan and headed for Nashville. They rented a modest apartment on the outskirts of the city and lived on a shoestring budget. Denise worked as a flight attendant, and legend has it, she picked up extra overnight shifts and long-haul routes just to make ends meet. Alan picked up odd jobs, driving filing papers, then stayed up late writing songs. There was no backup plan, just the two of them, and a stack of handwritten lyrics. At the time, Nashville was fixated on stars like Kenny Rogers and Barbara Mandrell artists, blending pop with country to suit the tastes of television audiences. Alan's stripped-down honky-tonk sound was seen as a hard sell. Once, after dropping off a demo at a label on Music Row, Alan was asked to leave the office within 3 minutes. The manager told him plainly, "You're stuck in the past." At a small bar gig where he opened the show, the crowd sat silent through his first song. Some got up and walked out. Still, Alan clenched his jaw and finished the set in a room that felt colder by the second. By 1987, the weight of unpaid bills repeated silence from record labels, and the growing distance between him and Denise, who was constantly in the air, pushed Alan into a quiet crisis. There's a story that one night Denise returned from a long flight to find him sitting motionless with his guitar, a songwriting notebook open in front of him, its pages stained with water. He said nothing. She simply rested her hand on his shoulder and whispered, "Your songs are honest. That's enough." It wasn't a pep talk, it was a lifeline. A few months later, Alan recorded a demo called New Traditional in Hendersonville. It was never officially released in the U.S., but somehow made its way into the hands of a staff member at Arista, a newly opened Nashville branch of the major label. They heard in Alan something the industry had started to forget: sincerity. In 1989, Alan signed with Arista Nashville, becoming their very first artist. His debut single, Blue-Blooded Woman, didn't make much noise, but his next album, Here in the Real World, changed everything. Songs like Chasin' That Neon Rainbow, Wanted, and I'd Love You All Over Again quickly climbed the country charts. At the party celebrating his first #1 hit, Alan raised a glass with Denise under the lights of the Grand Ole Opry and said, "We did it." He didn't say it loud, but Denise saw the emotion in his eyes. It wasn't about the fame or the money. It was that for the first time, the world was listening to his heart. Success came fast. Tour dates filled the calendar. The media came calling. Many urged Alan to modernize, to cross over into pop. But he said no. He kept the cowboy hat, the steel strings, and the songs about small things, parents' home roadside bars. But as the spotlight grew brighter and the family stood on the edge of a storm, what would Alan be able to hold on to, and what would he lose? From delivering mail in Nashville to becoming a country music legend, Alan Jackson's journey wasn't paved in gold, but every step left a mark that can't be erased. Over the span of more than 3 decades, Alan released 21 studio albums and sold over 75 million records worldwide, a figure few of his peers have matched. He earned 35 #1 hits on the Billboard Hot Country Songs chart, not through flashy marketing, but through simple melodies and lyrics that captured the heartbeat of Southern life, from Chasin' That Neon Rainbow to It's 5 o'clock somewhere. Alan didn't just sing, he told stories we'd all lived, heard, or held on to. He won 2 Grammys, one for Where Were You When the World Stopped Turning a Heartfelt Tribute to America After 9/11, and one for As She's Walking Away, a duet with Zac Brown Band. No choreography, no stage effects, just a cowboy hat, a guitar, and a man who sang straight from the heart. In addition, he took home 16 CMA awards, 17 ACM awards, and was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2017, a milestone many artists only dream of reaching. But for Alan, awards were never the finish line. Music isn't something you frame, it's something you live with, he once said in a quiet interview backstage at the Grand Ole Opry. And it was music that brought him into a life he never dared to imagine growing up in a crowded trailer. When Alan Jackson stood on stage accepting his Hall of Fame honor in 2017, many saw a legend. But a few remembered the boy from the mobile home. That's why he built Sweetbrier, not to show off, but to mark the moment when a dream became real. Sweetbrier, Alan's legendary estate, was nestled in Franklin, Tennessee, on 135 acres of land, filled with forest trails, still lakes, and winding dirt roads like something out of a southern postcard. The main house, over 22,000 square feet, blended white brick with classic Southern design grand columns, wide porches, and a stone patio where Denise planted lavender each spring. Inside was a world of its own. The living room had wood-beamed ceilings and warm linen sofas beneath soft golden light. The kitchen, Alan's favorite morning spot, had windows that looked out across the lake. Downstairs was a modest but personal studio, just a guitar, a microphone, and a photo of Hank Williams on the wall. After long tours, Alan came home to Sweetbrier like a farmer returning to his land. One neighbor recalled seeing him alone on the porch swing, picking a few quiet notes on his guitar, like he was in conversation with the boy he used to be. In 2021, he sold Sweetbrier for $19 million, not because he needed the money. As he put it, every journey comes to an end, even the dream home. A new chapter in Westme, smaller but closer. After leaving Sweetbrier, Alan moved into a cozier house in Westme, Nashville. There's no private lake, no boathouse, but there's a wooden porch, an old oak tree in the yard, and a living room filled with family photos. The kitchen is smaller now, but it's where his daughters stop by to cook dinner on weekends. The bedroom no longer has cathedral ceilings, but it's quieter, just enough space for him to read his Bible each morning. This shift wasn't a step back. It was a choice to live light and live close. Alan once said, after a long road, you don't need more space, you just need more time. Still, no matter how peaceful the home, what people hold on to isn't always about square footage or luxury. Sometimes it's what sits quietly in the garage out back. Not flashy, but full of meaning. No Italian supercars, no chrome-plated limousines. Alan Jackson's garage isn't loud, but every vehicle inside tells a chapter of his life. He didn't collect cars to impress. He kept the ones that meant something connected to his youth. His first tours or the early days when a night's pay was just $10 and a handshake. Standing out among them is a 1957 Ford Thunderbird ivory paint, bright red interior, like a postcard from the Eisenhower years. Legend has it, Alan once borrowed that very car to take Denise on a high school date, and later restored it as a gift. Today, a pristine 57 Thunderbird can fetch between $70,000 and $100,000. But to Alan, its real worth lies in summer afternoons and old AM radio songs. Next to it sits a 1968 Shelby GT 500 KR with a roaring 428 Cobra jet engine. It's the car he bought himself when his debut album went platinum, not to show off, but to remember how far the dream had come. On today's market, a clean Shelby KR can reach $200,000, $250,000, but Alan still drives it like day one down quiet country roads with no names. And then there's the 1970 Chevrolet Chevelle SS, the family car he used for weekend ball games, and Sunday drives through Noonan with Hank Williams playing on the radio. Fully restored models can top six figures, but Alan kept his as-is worn honest and untouched by time. Collecting with heart, not for show but for story. Alan doesn't just buy classic cars, he's involved in every step of restoration. Each panel, every dial, each stitch on the seats, he makes sure it stays true to its origin. To him, preserving a car's soul is no different than keeping the heart of a song. He once spent nearly a year redoing the Thunderbird's interior to match its original 1957 shade, not to resell, but simply because I wanted to sit inside and hear time speak. It's not about speed, it's about respect for the past. Even though he could call a driver anytime, Alan still prefers to get behind the wheel himself, usually in his old Ford F-150 pickup. Denise says he won't let anyone else drive him to church. For Alan, driving isn't just about going somewhere, it's about holding on to a piece of freedom. One hand on the wheel, one hand tuning the radio country songs filling the cab. That's when he becomes Alan, not Alan Jackson. Fans still spot him at roadside gas stations wearing a ball cap and denim shirt, always offering the same easy smile as if he never stood under the lights of the Grand Ole Opry. Cowboy style, a quiet statement. Like his cars, Alan Jackson's style speaks without raising its voice. He never walks on stage without his signature white cowboy hat, a denim shirt, and hand-tooled leather boots. Someone once asked why he doesn't change things up. Alan just smiled. "I don't dress for trends, I dress for who I am." The hat he wore to accept his 2002 Grammy still rests in his study beside his first guitar and a wedding photo with Denise. Not symbols, just memories, not for display but for remembrance. And through it all, what never changed? Fame, fortune, the million-dollar homes, classic cars, and sold-out arenas through it all. One thing never changed. Family remained the one steady ground in Alan Jackson's life. He and Denise have shared over 40 years together, weathering every high and low. They've had their silences, even their time apart, but always found their way back with love and patience. These days, they live quietly in Westme. No spotlight, just quiet fishing afternoons and soft guitar chords on the porch. Their 3 daughters live private lives. Since 2022, Alan's become a grandfather, and he often says, "I've had everything but this. This is the part I cherish most." Still, no matter how deep the love or warm the home, some things even time can't hold back. When illness came and his health began to step off the stage before he did. Behind the spotlight, Alan Jackson faced challenges that could have brought any man to his knees, but he didn't fall because he always had a woman beside him, a home to return to, and a reason to keep going. The house fire and starting over from scratch. In 1998, while Alan was riding high with his album High Mileage, a devastating fire destroyed the family's home in Tennessee. Many cherished possessions, personal items, and family keepsakes were lost. Denise and their 3 daughters made it out safely, but the shock left Alan silent for days. Legend has it, standing in the ashes, he turned to Denise and said, "Just one thing. We'll start over from nothing but together." A new house was built not long after, but for Alan, it wasn't about the new roof. It was about who was still standing by his side. A temporary distance and a quiet reminder to hold on. That same year, the demands of touring pulled Alan and Denise apart. They lived separately for a short time. There was no scandal, no headlines, just 2 people who had once loved each other deeply, slowly realizing they were growing distant. It was Denise who made the first move to rebuild. She stayed by Alan during his most exhausted, most uncertain days, gently reminding him of what truly mattered: family. They didn't just find their way back, they became stronger. Many would later say that's when Alan sang better than ever. A silent illness, and a night that took everyone's breath away. In 2021, Alan publicly revealed he had been diagnosed with Charcot-Marie-Tooth disease, CMT, a neurological condition that weakens muscles, affects balance, and has no known cure. It came at a time when America was just emerging from the pandemic. Concerts were returning, but nothing felt the same. Still, Alan went ahead with his farewell tour, one more for the road, knowing that every step on stage might be his last. During one performance in Nashville, while singing Drive, he nearly fell. The crowd froze. Some in the audience began to cry, but Alan gripped the microphone, pulled himself upright, and kept singing. Denise stood just off stage, her eyes full of tears, but she never looked away. That night, backstage, Alan is said to have whispered only this: "As long as I can sing, I'll stand." Staying true and winning quietly. Even back in the 1990s, Alan was called too traditional as country pop began dominating the airwaves. But he didn't follow the trend. He stuck with denim shirts, classic honky-tonk sounds, and simple songs about home, family, and real life in America. That quiet loyalty earned him more than just awards from CMA Male Vocalist of the Year to Album of the Year for Drive 2002. More importantly, it earned him the lasting trust of millions, not because he changed with the times, but because he didn't. Through it all, the house fire, the strained marriage, the fading health. What remained wasn't a spot on the charts, it was authenticity. And that, more than anything else, is what placed Alan Jackson in a space no one else can fill in the hearts of country music fans. Alan Jackson isn't just famous, he's trusted. In a world that changes by the day, he's the kind of man who's held on to music, to family, and to character. The keeper of honky-tonk, As country music entered the 2000s and pop influences took over, many artists changed to keep up with the times. Alan didn't. He stayed true to the steel guitar plain-spoken lyrics, denim shirts, and that unmistakable Georgia drawl. That quiet determination earned him 3 CMA Male Vocalist of the Year awards, 7 consecutive No. 1 albums, and a lasting place in the hearts of fans. There was no big declaration. Alan kept Honky Tonk alive simply by being honest, one song at a time. A song for a hurting America. After the tragedy of 9/11, America was torn between anger and sorrow. While many artists released songs of protest, Alan quietly offered something else. Where were you when the world stopped? Turning a song not to shout, but to comfort. It wasn't political, it wasn't loud, just a man asking, where were you when everything changed? The song became an anthem played for weeks on radio stations across the country and earned Alan the 2002 Grammy Award. Giving without spotlight, but always when it matters. Few people know that after a tornado devastated his hometown of Newnan in 2021, Alan quietly donated and organized a benefit concert to help rebuild the community. He's also supported research for Charcot-Marie tooth disease, not just because he lives with it, but because he knows so many others don't have a voice to speak for themselves. For Alan, helping others isn't a duty. It's simply part of living kindly. The Hall of Fame and a moment behind the curtain. In 2017, Alan Jackson was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame, joining the ranks of legends like George Jones and Loretta Lynn. His speech was short, humble, and without fanfare. But backstage, a staff member recalled seeing Alan stand quietly alone in front of a photo of Hank Williams, the man who first inspired him at age 12. I was just a kid writing songs in a garage in Newnan. He didn't say it to anyone in particular, just to remind himself. The Bluebird Cafe, a living legacy. Alan never opened restaurant chains or launched a clothing brand, but he helped preserve the Bluebird Cafe, a small, iconic venue that gave hundreds of young voices their start. It was also where he sang his earliest songs. There's no portrait of him on the wall, no reserved seat, just a musician who wanted to protect something meaningful for the next generation. Alan Jackson's journey from a boy in a trailer to a Hall of Fame legend isn't just a story about music. It's proof that honesty, perseverance, and love for family can carry you a long way without ever losing who you are. What about you? What has kept you grounded through the years? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story moved, you don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more inspiring journeys like this one.